The November rain hammered the cracked pavement of Route 66 outside Amarillo, Texas, creating rivers of muddy water that rushed toward the gutters. 14-year-old Marcus Reed sat hunched on a metal bench at the bus stop, his thin jacket doing little to keep out the cold. His worn sneakers, 2 sizes too small, were soaked through. He clutched a manila folder against his chest. Inside were papers that could change his life. Today was supposed to be the day. The Hendersons, a nice couple from the suburbs, had scheduled the final meeting with the adoption agency. After 3 years bouncing between foster homes, Marcus was finally going to have a real family. He checked his phone again. The battery icon blinked red, 2% remaining. The bus was already 20 minutes late, and his caseworker, Mrs. Patterson, had sent 3 increasingly urgent texts. "Marcus, where are you? The Hendersons are waiting. This is very important. Please respond immediately." His fingers trembled as he typed back, "Bus is late. I'm coming. Please wait." If you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you more stories like this one. The rain picked up, turning the afternoon sky dark as evening. Marcus stood and paced, his eyes scanning the empty road for any sign of the number 47 bus. That's when he heard it, a desperate scream cutting through the downpour. His head snapped toward the sound. Across the highway, near an abandoned gas station, a little girl in a pink raincoat was being dragged toward a rusty van by a man with a shaved head and a leather jacket. The man's hand clamped over her mouth as she kicked and struggled. Marcus's heart stopped. Everything misses. Patterson had drilled into him about staying out of trouble, about being on his best behavior, about today being his one shot. It all dissolved in an instant. He looked at his phone. 1% battery. He looked at the road. Still no bus. He looked at the little girl, her eyes wide with terror. He ran. His sneakers splashed through puddles as he sprinted across the 4-lane highway, narrowly dodging a semi-truck that blared its horn. The man with the shaved head shoved the girl toward the van's sliding door. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. "Hey!" Marcus shouted, his voice cracking. "Let her go!" The man spun around, his face contorted with rage. He was massive, at least 6'3", with arms covered in faded tattoos. "Get lost, kid, before you get hurt." Marcus's legs felt like jelly, but he kept moving forward. "I said let her go." The man laughed, a cruel sound that made Marcus's skin crawl. He released the girl for just a second, and that's when Marcus lunged. He wasn't big or strong, but he was fast. He grabbed the girl's hand and yanked her backward, just as the man's fist swung through the air where her head had been. The punch connected with Marcus's shoulder instead, sending him sprawling onto the wet asphalt. Pain exploded through his arm. "Run!" Marcus gasped to the girl. She stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. "Run!" The man advanced on Marcus, his boots heavy on the pavement. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, kid." Marcus scrambled backward, his hand finding a broken piece of pipe near the gas station's crumbling foundation. He swung it wildly, connecting with the man's shin. The man howled and stumbled, and in that moment, Marcus heard the roar of motorcycle engines. 3 Harley-Davidsons burst around the corner of the abandoned station, their chrome gleaming even in the rain. The lead rider, a mountain of a man with a grey beard and a vest covered in patches, killed his engine and dismounted in one fluid motion. The patch on his back read, "Hell's Angels MC," in bold letters. "That's my daughter," the man said, his voice like gravel and thunder combined. His name was Jacob Ironside Morrison, president of the West Texas chapter. Behind him, 2 other bikers flanked out, their expressions hard as stone. The man with the shaved head paled. "Look, this is a misunderstanding." "Shut up," Ironside said quietly. He looked at Marcus, who was still on the ground, clutching his shoulder. Then he looked at his daughter, Lily, standing in her pink raincoat, trembling but unharmed. "You okay, baby girl?" Lily nodded and ran to her father, burying her face in his leather vest. Ironside held her with one arm and pointed at the man with the other. "You got 3 seconds to tell me who you are and why you had your hands on my kid before I forget I'm trying to be a better man." The man stammered something about a custody dispute, about being Lily's uncle, about rights. Ironside didn't buy a word. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911, his eyes never leaving the man's face. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance. Ironside knelt beside Marcus. "You all right, son?" Marcus nodded, though his shoulder throbbed. He looked at his phone. Dead. The bus stop across the highway was still empty. His chest tightened as reality crashed back in. The adoption meeting, the Hendersons, his one chance. "I have to go," Marcus said, trying to stand. His legs buckled. "Easy," Ironside said, steadying him. "Where do you need to be?" Marcus's voice broke. "I had an adoption meeting. Downtown. It started 30 minutes ago. I missed it. They're not going to wait. I missed it." The words came out in a rush, tears mixing with rain on his face. 3 years of hoping, of being good, of following every rule, gone because he couldn't ignore a little girl's scream. Ironside exchanged a look with his brothers. "What's your name, kid?" "Marcus." "Well, Marcus, you just saved my daughter's life. Where exactly is this meeting?" Marcus gave him the address, the Children's Advocacy Center on Harrison Street. Ironside pulled out his phone and made a call. When the police arrived, he gave a statement, made sure Lily was checked by the paramedics, and arranged for one of his brothers to take her home to her mother. Then he turned to Marcus. "Get on." Marcus stared at the massive Harley. "What?" "I said get on. We're getting you to that meeting." The ride through Amarillo was a blur of rain and speed. Marcus had never been on a motorcycle before. He clung to Ironside's vest as they wove through traffic, the engine's roar drowning out his racing thoughts. When they pulled up to the Children's Advocacy Center, Marcus could see through the glass doors. The lobby was empty except for a security guard. Ironside walked in with him, water dripping from their clothes. The receptionist looked up, startled. "We're closed." The last appointment ended at 4. "I'm looking for Mrs. Patterson," Ironside said. "She had a meeting about an adoption." The receptionist's expression softened with pity. "That meeting ended 45 minutes ago. The family left." Marcus felt the floor drop out from under him. He'd known it, but hearing it made it real. 3 years. One chance. Gone. "Is there any way to reach them?" Ironside pressed. "This kid had an emergency. He was helping someone, my daughter." The receptionist shook her head. "I'm sorry. I can leave a message for Mrs. Patterson, but I can't guarantee anything. These families, when someone doesn't show up, they tend to move on quickly." Marcus turned and walked back out into the rain. He didn't cry. He felt too empty for tears. Ironside followed him, standing silently beside him on the wet sidewalk. "I'm sorry, kid," Ironside finally said. Marcus shrugged, the movement making his shoulder throb. "It's okay, I'm used to it." "Where's your foster home?" Marcus gave him an address on the east side of town. The ride there was quieter, slower. When they pulled up to a small house with peeling paint and a chain-link fence, Marcus climbed off the bike. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for the ride. And tell Lily I'm glad she's okay." Ironside didn't start his engine. "You got a phone number?" Marcus recited it, and Ironside saved it in his contacts. "You're a brave kid, Marcus. What you did today, that took guts, real guts." Marcus nodded and walked toward the house. His foster mother, Mrs. Chen, opened the door before he reached it. Her face was tight with anger. "Where have you been? Mrs. Patterson called. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Marcus pushed past her without answering and went straight to the small room he shared with two other boys. He peeled off his wet clothes, changed into dry ones, and lay on the bottom bunk, staring at the springs above him. Outside his window, he heard the Harley's engine roar to life and fade into the distance. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lily's terrified face, felt the impact of that punch on his shoulder, heard the receptionist's words. The family left. By dawn, he'd accepted it. The Hendersons were gone. Another family would never materialize. He'd age out of the system in 4 years and be on his own. That was just how it was. The next morning, Mrs. Chen shook him awake earlier than usual. "Get up, get dressed, you have visitors." Marcus sat up, confused. "Who?" "Just get downstairs." He pulled on jeans and a clean t-shirt, his movements slow from the bruise blooming across his shoulder. When he walked into the living room, he stopped dead. The room was full of bikers. 7 of them, all wearing Hell's Angels vests, filled the small space with their presence. Ironside sat on the couch, his grey beard neatly combed, looking somehow even larger indoors. Mrs. Chen stood in the kitchen doorway, her eyes wide, clearly unsure what to make of this. "Morning, Marcus," Ironside said. "How's the shoulder?" "It's okay," Marcus managed. "What are you doing here?" Ironside stood. "Wanted to thank you proper, and I wanted you to meet the boys." He gestured around the room. Each biker nodded or raised a hand. "This is Diesel, Hammer, Snake, Preacher, Tiny. Who ain't Tiny? And you met Razor and Torch yesterday." Marcus nodded awkwardly. "Nice to meet you. We also wanted to see if you'd like to come to a barbecue this afternoon. My wife's making ribs. Lily wants to thank you herself." Marcus glanced at Mrs. Chen, who looked as shocked as he felt. I don't know if I can." "Already cleared it with your caseworker," Ironside said. "Mrs. Patterson said it was fine. She wants to talk to you later this week anyway." The mention of Mrs. Patterson made Marcus's stomach twist, but he nodded. "Okay, yeah, thank you." The barbecue was at Ironside's house, a ranch-style property about 20 miles outside Amarillo. The yard was enormous, with a fire pit, picnic tables, and a garage that housed half a dozen motorcycles in various states of repair. When Marcus arrived, Ironside had picked him up personally. The place was already filled with bikers and their families. Kids ran around playing tag, women stood in groups chatting, and the smell of grilling meat filled the air. Lily spotted Marcus immediately and ran over, her mother close behind. She threw her arms around his waist. "Thank you for saving me." Marcus patted her back awkwardly. "You're welcome." Lily's mother, Sarah, had tears in her eyes. She was a small woman with kind features and auburn hair pulled into a ponytail. "I don't know how to thank you. Jacob told me what you did, what you gave up." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "It's okay. I just did what anyone would do." "No," Sarah said firmly. "You didn't. You risked your life for a stranger. That's not something most people would do, especially not at 14. Throughout the afternoon, Marcus found himself surrounded by bikers and their families. They treated him like he was one of them, like he mattered. Diesel, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek, taught him how to throw darts. Preacher, who got his nickname because he used to be a youth pastor before joining the MC, asked him about school and what he liked to read. Tiny, who was indeed massive, showed him pictures of his vintage Harley restoration project. As the sun began to set, Ironside called Marcus over to where he sat by the fire pit. "Sit down, kid. We need to talk." Marcus's stomach knotted. Here it comes, he thought. The part where they say goodbye and he goes back to the foster home and never sees any of them again. Ironside poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks into the darkening sky. "I did some digging. Talked to Mrs. Patterson. She told me about your situation. 3 years in the system, 5 different homes, no permanent placement." He looked at Marcus. "That's rough." Marcus stared at the flames. It's fine. It's not fine, Ironside said quietly. A kid shouldn't have to live like that, shouldn't have to feel like they don't belong anywhere. Well, that's how it is. Ironside was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The Hendersons, Mrs. Patterson reached out to them, explained what happened yesterday, why you missed the meeting." Marcus's head snapped up. Hope flickered in his chest, painful and dangerous. They said they appreciated knowing the reason, but they've decided to move forward with another child, one who's younger. They said they're sorry, but they don't think it's a good fit anymore. The hope died as quickly as it had sparked. Marcus nodded, his throat tight. "Okay. But here's the thing," Ironside continued. "Sarah and we've been talking about Lily, about what could have happened if you hadn't been there, about the kind of person you are." He paused. "We want to know if you'd consider letting us foster you." Marcus's brain stuttered. "What? We've already started the paperwork. Mrs. Patterson thinks it could work, but it's up to you. We've got the space. Lily's room is on one side of the house, and we've got 2 spare rooms on the other. You'd have your own space, your own room, a place at the table, a family, if you want one." Marcus couldn't process the words. You want to foster me? Why?" "Because yesterday you proved what kind of man you're going to be," Ironside said. "You gave up something that mattered to you to help someone who needed it. That's character, Marcus. That's the kind of person we want in our lives, in our family." Sarah appeared beside Ironside, Lily holding her hand. "We'd really like you to stay, Marcus, if you're willing." Marcus looked at them, this family of bikers and kindness and second chances. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "I don't want to be a burden." "You won't be," Sarah said firmly. "You'll be our son." The word hit Marcus like a physical force. Son. He'd never been anyone's son. He'd been a case file, a placement, a temporary situation, never a son. "Can I think about it?" he asked, though his heart was already screaming yes. "Take all the time you need," Ironside said. "But just so you know, the ribs on Sunday are going to be even better than today's." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "Okay, I mean, yes, I'd like that, to stay with you, if you really mean it." "We mean it," Sarah said, and pulled him into a hug that felt like the first real thing that had happened to him in 3 years. Over the next few weeks, the paperwork crawled through the system. Mrs. Patterson expedited what she could, impressed by the Morrison family's references and home assessment. Ironside, it turned out, owned a successful custom motorcycle shop. Sarah was a registered nurse at Amarillo's main hospital. They had stability, resources, and most importantly, genuine care for Marcus. Moving into the Morrison house felt surreal. Marcus's new room was painted a warm blue, with a desk by the window and a bookshelf that Sarah had already started filling with novels and comics. The first night, he lay in an actual bed. Not a bunk, not a cot, but a real bed with a thick comforter, and couldn't quite believe it was real. School became easier with stability at home. Marcus's grades, which had always been decent despite his circumstances, improved dramatically. He joined the debate team, something he'd never had the stability to commit to before. Sarah helped him with his math homework at the kitchen table. Ironside taught him basic motorcycle maintenance in the garage, showing him how to change oil, check tire pressure, and respect the machines. But it wasn't all smooth. There were nights when Marcus woke up in a cold sweat, convinced he'd wake up in a different house, that this was temporary, like everything else had been. There were moments when he'd flinch at loud noises or withdraw when emotions ran high, patterns carved by years of uncertainty. Ironside and Sarah never pushed. They gave him space when he needed it and presence when he craved it. Slowly, carefully, Marcus began to believe it might last. 3 months after moving in, on a cold February morning, Mrs. Patterson arrived for a scheduled home visit. Marcus's stomach churned as she sat at the kitchen table, her briefcase open, reviewing notes. "How are you settling in, Marcus?" she asked. "Good," he said cautiously. "Really good." She smiled. "The Morrison family has submitted a petition to adopt you. They've completed all the required steps. I need to know how you feel about that." Marcus looked at Ironside and Sarah, who sat quietly, letting him speak for himself. He thought about the past 3 months, the family dinners, the motorcycle rides, the way Lily had started calling him her brother without anyone telling her to. He thought about feeling safe for the first time in his memory. "I want that," Marcus said clearly. "I want them to adopt me." Mrs. Patterson made a note. "Then I'll recommend approval. The court date will be in about 6 weeks. If everything goes well, the Morrison family will officially become your forever family." Forever. The word settled over Marcus like a warm blanket. The 6 weeks passed in a blur of nervous anticipation and growing hope. The Hells Angels brothers became regular fixtures at the Morrison house, treating Marcus like one of their own. Diesel taught him how to play poker. Preacher helped him study for his history exam. Tiny let him help with the Harley restoration, showing him the patience and precision required to rebuild something broken into something beautiful. On the day of the court hearing, Marcus wore the new suit Sarah had bought him. His hands shook as they entered the courthouse. Ironside placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "You got this, son." The hearing itself was brief. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and a kind smile, reviewed the case. She asked Marcus a few questions about his feelings, his comfort in the Morrison home, his relationship with Lily. She asked the Morrisons about their commitment and their understanding of adopting a teenager who'd been through trauma. Finally, she brought down her gavel. "It is the order of this court that the petition for adoption is granted. Marcus Reed shall henceforth be known as Marcus Morrison. Congratulations to the Morrison family." Sarah cried. Ironside's eyes were suspiciously bright. Lily cheered. And Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, a tightness he'd carried for years, finally loosening. Outside the courthouse, the entire Hells Angels West Texas chapter was waiting. They'd parked their motorcycles in formation, creating an honor guard. As the Morrison family emerged, the bikers erupted in cheers, revving their engines in celebration. Diesel clapped Marcus on the back. "Welcome to the family, kid, the real family." That night, the club threw a party at the clubhouse. There was food, music, and stories that made Marcus laugh until his sides hurt. One of the older members, a man everyone called Ghost because of his white hair, pulled Marcus aside. "You know why Ironside wanted to adopt you so bad?" Ghost asked. Marcus shook his head. "Because he sees himself in you. Jacob grew up in foster care too, bounced around until he was 17, then aged out with nothing. The club became his family. He always said if he ever got the chance to give a kid what he never had, he'd take it. You gave him that chance, Marcus." Marcus looked across the room to where Ironside stood with Sarah and Lily, their heads bent together in conversation. His family, not temporary, not conditional, just family. In the following months, Marcus discovered what it meant to have people in his corner. When he tried out for the school basketball team and didn't make it, Ironside took him to the garage and taught him that failure was just information, not identity. When he struggled with a particularly difficult English essay, Sarah sat with him and helped him find his voice. When kids at school whispered about his past, Lily fiercely defended him, telling anyone who'd listen that her brother was a hero. The summer after his adoption, Ironside asked Marcus if he wanted to go on the annual club ride, a week-long trip through New Mexico and Arizona, camping under the stars and riding hundreds of miles through some of the most beautiful country in America. "You're part of the family now," Ironside said. That means you're part of the club family too, if you want to be. Marcus had been riding his own motorcycle for months now, a used Sportster that Ironside and the boys had helped him rebuild and customize. The idea of a week-long journey both terrified and thrilled him. "I want to go," Marcus said. The ride was everything Marcus had imagined and more. The roar of engines on open highway, the smell of desert sage, the camaraderie around campfires under impossible skies. The bikers treated him like their own, teaching him road wisdom and the unspoken codes of their culture. They talked about brotherhood, loyalty, and standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. One night, camped in a canyon in Arizona, Preacher asked Marcus what he wanted to do with his life. Marcus thought about it. "I want to help people. Kids, maybe, like Mrs. Patterson helped me." Ironside, listening from across the fire, nodded approvingly. "Social work's hard, but you've got the heart for it." "Maybe," Marcus said, "or maybe I'll work with bikes, help kids learn to fix things, give them something to focus on." "Why not both?" Diesel suggested. "World needs people who can fix broken things, machines and people." Marcus smiled. For the first time in his life, the future felt like something to look forward to rather than something to fear. When they returned from the ride, tanned and road-weary, Sarah and Lily had a surprise waiting. They'd painted the garage wall with a mural, a motorcycle riding toward a sunset, with the words, "Morrison Family Garage," arching above it. "We thought maybe you and Dad could make it official," Sarah said. "Turn the garage into a real shop. Teach other kids what you've learned." Ironside looked at Marcus. "What do you think, son?" Marcus looked at the mural, at his family, at the motorcycles in the garage that represented freedom and second chances. He thought about that rainy November day when he'd run toward danger instead of safety, when he'd chosen someone else's life over his own comfort. That choice had brought him here, to this family, this home, this possibility. "I think it's perfect," Marcus said. The Morrison Family Garage opened 6 months later. It started small, just weekend classes teaching basic motorcycle maintenance to teens from difficult backgrounds. Word spread quickly. Soon, kids from all over Amarillo were showing up, some from foster care, some from broken homes, some just looking for direction. Marcus, now 15, helped Ironside run the programs. He understood these kids in a way few adults could. He knew what it felt like to be invisible, disposable, scared. He knew what it meant to need someone to believe in you. One Saturday afternoon, a skinny 13-year-old named David showed up, referred by a caseworker. He had the same haunted look Marcus recognized from his own reflection years ago, the look of someone expecting the world to disappoint them. "You here to learn about motorcycles?" Marcus asked. David shrugged. "My caseworker said I should try it." "That's not an answer. Do you want to be here?" David met his eyes for the first time. "I don't know what I want." Marcus handed him a wrench. "Fair enough. How about we start with changing this oil, and you can figure it out as we go." By the end of the day, David had changed oil, learned to check tire pressure, and smiled for the first time in Marcus's presence. As he was leaving, he turned back. "Why do you do this?" David asked. "Help kids like me." Marcus thought about how to answer. "Because someone helped me once. Couple of bikers saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. Gave me a family when I didn't have one. Sometimes paying it forward is the only way to make sense of the good things that happen to you." David nodded slowly. "Will you be here next week?" "Every Saturday," Marcus promised. That night at dinner, Lily asked Marcus to help her with a school project about heroes. She was supposed to interview someone she considered heroic. "Can I interview you?" she asked. Marcus laughed. "I'm not a hero, Lil." "Yes, you are," she insisted. "You saved my life. That makes you a hero." Sarah reached across the table and squeezed Marcus's hand. "She's right, you know. You are." Ironside cleared his throat. Being a hero isn't about being perfect or fearless. It's about doing the right thing even when it costs you something. You've been doing that since the day we met you, son. Marcus felt his chest tighten with emotion. These people, his family, saw him in ways he'd never seen himself. The boy who'd missed his adoption meeting to save a stranger had found something better than he'd lost. He'd found people who understood that heroism wasn't about grand gestures or recognition. It was about showing up, doing the work, and caring enough to act when it mattered. "Okay, Lil," Marcus said. "You can interview me." She beamed and pulled out her notebook, already scribbling questions. 2 years after his adoption, on Marcus's 17th birthday, the Hells Angels threw him a party at the clubhouse. The room was packed with bikers, families, and kids from the garage program. In the center of it all, Marcus stood with his family, feeling overwhelmed by gratitude. Ghost approached with a small wrapped box. "This is from all of us." Marcus unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a leather vest, custom-made, with the Morrison family garage patch on the back. On the front, over his heart, was a small patch that read, "Road Guardian." "It's not a club vest," Ghost explained. "We don't recruit minors, but it's a symbol of what you did for Lily, of what you do for these kids every week. You guard people on their journey, Marcus. That's who you are." Marcus ran his fingers over the leather, emotion catching in his throat. "Thank you, all of you." Ironside pulled him into a fierce hug. "You saved my daughter. You gave me the son I always wanted. We're the ones who should be thanking you." Sarah and Lily joined the embrace, and Marcus felt the final pieces of his broken childhood settle into place. This was his family, this was home, not because of DNA or legal documents, though those mattered, but because they'd chosen each other day after day, in big moments and small ones. As the party continued around them, Marcus thought about that November day in the rain. The choice that had felt like losing everything had actually been the beginning of gaining more than he'd ever imagined. The Hendersons had moved on to another child, and that was okay. Their path wasn't his path. His path had led him here, to a garage full of motorcycles and second chances, to a family bound by choice and love, to a purpose that made every difficult day worthwhile. He thought about David and the other kids who came through the garage looking for something they couldn't quite name. He understood that search now. They were looking for what he'd found, proof that the world contained more than abandonment and broken promises. Proof that sometimes, when you save someone else, you end up saving yourself. Proof that family wasn't about blood or circumstances. It was about showing up, holding on, and believing that tomorrow could be different from yesterday. Marcus pulled on his new vest, feeling its weight settle across his shoulders. It fit perfectly, just like this life, just like this family. He looked around the room, at Ironside teaching a kid how to hold a pool cue, at Sarah laughing with the other wives, at Lily dancing with her friends, at the bikers who'd become his uncles and brothers and mentors. "You ready for cake?" Lily asked, tugging his hand. Marcus smiled. "Yeah, Lil, I'm ready." As they gathered around the table, candles flickering on a homemade chocolate cake, everyone sang "Happy Birthday." Marcus closed his eyes and made a wish. Not for himself, but for every kid still waiting in the system, still hoping for someone to see them, still believing that maybe, just maybe, their story could have a happy ending too. He blew out the candles, and the room erupted in cheers. Later that night, after the party ended and the clubhouse was clean, Marcus rode home with Ironside through the quiet streets of Amarillo. The November night was clear and cold, so different from that rainy afternoon 3 years ago. They pulled into the driveway, the garage door already open, revealing the workshop that had become Marcus's second home. "You did good today," Ironside said, killing his engine. "It was just a birthday party," Marcus replied. I'm not talking about the party. I'm talking about everything. How you've grown, how you've used what happened to you to help other people, how you've become the man we always knew you could be. Ironside paused. I'm proud of you, son. The words settled into Marcus's chest, filling spaces he hadn't known were empty. Thank you, Dad. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind that only exists between people who truly know each other. You know what the best part of all this is? Ironside finally asked. What? 3 years ago, you ran into danger to save a little girl you didn't know. You gave up what you thought was your only chance at a family. And look what happened. He gestured to the house, the garage, the life they'd built together. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust that doing the right thing will lead you where you need to go, even if you can't see the path. Marcus nodded, understanding. That rainy day had felt like the end of everything. In reality, it had been the beginning of everything that mattered. They walked into the house together, where Sarah had left the porch light on and Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, waiting for them to come home. Marcus covered her with a blanket while Ironside locked up. This was his family. This was his life. This was the future he'd built from a single choice to act with courage and compassion. And somewhere in the city, another kid was waiting at a bus stop, hoping for a chance, praying for a family, searching for a sign that life could be different. Marcus knew he couldn't save them all. But tomorrow, when they opened the garage, he'd be there, ready to teach, to listen, to show them what had been shown to him. That every ending is a beginning, that heroes come in unexpected forms, and that sometimes the family you choose is the one that saves you. Marcus turned off the lights and headed to his room, his real room, in his real home, with his real family sleeping safely under the same roof. He lay down in bed, the leather vest hanging carefully on his chair, and smiled into the darkness. 3 years ago, he'd missed an adoption meeting to save a biker's daughter. The next day, the Hells Angels had changed his life, but really, they'd all changed each other. That was the secret nobody told you about families. They weren't just given or found. They were built, piece by piece, choice by choice, day by day, until one morning you woke up and realized you'd created something unbreakable. Marcus Morrison closed his eyes, surrounded by love and belonging, and slept the dreamless sleep of someone finally, truly home.